you that should immediately trigger 25 blanks. Your ultimate goal is that you want to open the lock, which means that there is only one correct combination for that lock. There is only one correct first number. There is only one correct second number, only one correct third, fourth, and fifth number. But what you get to select from changes in the problem. And you know that you have digits that are 0 through 9, so you have a total of 10 digits in the exercise. And your specific requirement is that you know that no number was used more than once. So repetition was not allowed, another way to say the same thing. That means that you had 10 choices that you could have drawn from for the first digit in your lock, but only one of them is correct. And then you had 9 choices, then you had 8, then you had 7, then you had 6. And I remember talking about this one on Wednesday, in that your calculator forces you to know something more about where its deficiencies happen to be. If we try to type that into the calculator, and I type that 1 out of 10, and that 1 out of 9, and the 1 out of 8, and the 1 out of 7, and the 1 out of 6, the calculator gives me a number that is written in scientific notation, which it is likely to do for you on several exercises as well. So this value of 3.3067878 with a bunch of other decimal places out there, E -5, means that the calculator is telling you, I don't have the programming, I was not programmed to give decimal numbers with a bunch of leading zeros. So it means that you're talking about a number here, which in scientific notation says 10 to the -5th power. And that means that you're supposed to shift the decimal place five places to the left. And if you're going to shift that decimal place 5 places to the left, the first decimal place of movement, the second decimal place of movement is going to force you to annex a 0. The third decimal place of movement forces you to annex another one, the fourth decimal place another one, and the fifth decimal place another one, until at the end of the problem, you have a decimal digit that looks like this. And then they will tell you what they want to do with the answer. Now, most of the time, they have you, well, a lot of the time they have you writing fractions, but some of the time they have you writing decimals as well. In this particular case, they may very likely ask you to keep 6 decimal places in the problem, which means that your focus gets drawn to the 7th decimal place. And that value is less than 5, so we drop everything from that particular side, making our final answer 4 leading zeros and just the 3-3. If they'd have wanted 7 decimal places, then our focus would have been on the 6. We would have rounded up 1 place, and so on down the line. Rounding errors are common for us out there if we're not careful. There is a chance that they may ask you for this problem not as a decimal number, but they may ask you for a fractional number. And unfortunately, trying to tack the convert to fraction command onto the end of your calculation doesn't work because the calculator doesn't have that deep of a programming base in the problem. So it's distinctly possible that you might have to do this problem in pieces, just like the multiplication of fractions is done as pieces. So that would mean that you know when you start multiplying across the top here, that all these ones being multiplied together are going to give you a nice value of 1, but you might actually, if they want a fractional answer, have to build by doing the numerator and denominator pieces separately. So when I look at the denominator and do that multiplication problem, I get a decimal or a value that's going to look something like this. So if they ask you for a fraction, your calculator will not always cooperate with you. If they ask you for a decimal, it will not always cooperate with you. You may have to play some fill in the blanks type of situations. And that would hold true for also a workbook page. The workbook doesn't specify a lot of times whether they want a fraction or whether they want a decimal. Fractions are always acceptable. Decimals leave you open to how many decimal places you're going to keep, and I can usually judge by looking at the work you have there how many decimal places we're going to have to worry about in the problem. So I'm less likely to worry about that on a workbook page, but on a workbook page, when I see something like this written in a problem without the student doing any attempt to do anything more, it drives me crazy. Because we talked about it, most people do not speak scientific notation, so you have to translate for them. So we expect either to have a regular decimal or expect to have a fraction of the problem, depending upon what they ask for. Homework's pretty, on the program, it's pretty specific about what it wants, and we don't have to worry about that too much, but that's going to happen to you more than one time in your homework set, where they're going to force you to interface with that scientific notation type of problem. So I think we talked about that one before we left on Monday, so let's move on to the next one. The author